Last Ceann Corrigan Margaret, I'm taking question on voluntary housing agencies, along with similar question from Deputy Jean O'Kenny. So basically, the substance of the question, Minister, is to find out from you if you're aware of very serious rent hikes being implemented by voluntary housing bodies because of methods that they use to calculate rents, and if you have any intention of investigating this and putting more structures and restraints on how voluntary housing bodies and approved housing bodies can increase their rents or conduct their rent regime, please.
Thank you, Lass. I propose taking PQs 8 and 46 together. The normal legislative provisions of the Residential Tenancies Acts governing rent setting, rent reviews and notices of changed rents for private rented tenancies do not apply to approved housing bodies' tenancies. Instead, these matters are governed by the tenancy agreements, leases or financing arrangements in place. Where social housing units are provided by housing bodies under payments and availability arrangements with local authorities, it is a condition of such funding that rents must be determined in accordance with the differential rent scheme of the housing authority in which the house is situated. This mechanism accounts for a significant element of the housing currently being delivered by housing bodies. Where housing is provided by housing bodies under the Capital Assistance Scheme, my department's historical guidance states that rents should be at levels which are reasonable, having regard to the tenant's income and the outlay of the housing body on the accommodation, including the ongoing property management costs. Housing bodies are also required to consult with the local authority in relation to the setting of rents. It should be noted that provision has been made in the Residential Tenancies Act of 2004 for the Residential Tenancies Board to have a dispute resolution role in relation to housing bodies' tenancy rent settings and reviews. In summary, a housing body tenant may refer a dispute to the RTB for resolution as to whether the initial rent set for their tenancy or a rent arising from a rent review is in line with the provisions of tenancy arrangements, leases or financing arrangements that are in place. This provides an important protection for housing body tenants in situations where a dispute arises in relation to these matters. Notwithstanding this, it is timely that the overall approach to rents in the housing body sector will be subject to review, and my department will be considering this matter later this year in consultation with the housing body sector and local authorities, taking account also of work being undertaken in relation to the development of a national framework of differential rents.
Minister, I note that 47,000 social houses are due to be built by 2021. You might believe that, I don't, but however it is the target of the Rebuilding Ireland policy, and the role of approved housing bodies and voluntary housing bodies within that is quite a central part. In fact, about a third or some 15,000 houses could be from that sector, and that sector indeed is subsidised to a huge degree by the state itself. Look, I know you said there that the remit of the RTB covers rent rises within this sector, but I have it in writing, both from the RTB and from Cluid, who are the voluntary housing body that I'm complaining about here, that the RTB doesn't cover a rent rise within that particular sector. It does cover the setting of the rent, but not a rent rise. And there is a memorandum of understanding with this sector that says, as you have said, the rent should be reasonable and there should be a floor or a lowest limit set in it, but it doesn't set a ceiling. And there's a problem here, because if you take a third of that voluntary housing stock, or the housing stock, social housing stock coming from the voluntary housing sector, always had a great reputation, always believed this was a great sector to be housed from. All of the tenants are taken from the local authority lists, but I have constituents, as do other TDs, whose tenants are paying much higher rents than the local authority because they don't use the local authority method. And when I query this, they say, well, we do use a local authority method, we don't just happen to use the local authority where we are located. So a house, a scheme in Chapel Izard, they could be setting the rent according to terms of a local authority in Kerry, for all I know, but it's certainly not DCC's method of setting the rent. And so I have clients whose rent has risen by 38% this month. Now, that is way out of kilter with the national norm, and something needs to be done about to address it.
You've taken your 2 questions, so Minister.
Thank you, Last. And as I said in my initial reply, Deputy, I will review and consider the matter that you have raised, and I'll also be looking at the differential rents under the national framework later this year. Housing bodies are playing a crucial role at the moment, and will continue to play a crucial role as we look to develop and supply more social housing to people in this country, insofar as building out those 47,000 or providing those 47,000 new social housing homes over the course of the Rebuilding Ireland plan. A big piece of work is going to come into the Dáil in September in relation to the regulation of housing bodies. It's a very important piece of work because we have, I think it's over 300 housing bodies in the state that are dealing with these issues at the moment. And we need to find ways in which we can make sure that there is a consistency of approach between housing bodies, that we are leveraging those housing bodies to their maximum potential, be it in terms of financing solutions, but also in terms of increasing scale insofar as what those housing bodies are doing. And that might require amalgamations, potentially. We'll have to see about that. It might require housing bodies from abroad coming in who've got greater experience at doing this at scale, but there's a huge potential here. The most important thing is that we get the regulation in place onto a statutory footing, because that will open up the avenues for financing, which will then help us do everything else that we want to achieve. Thank you.
And Deputy Kenny.
Oh, no, he's not.
Well, it was very generous, but anyway, short question.
Sorry, I'm just. I do not get time to come back on what he said.
You do, yeah. I'll give you the 2 minutes because I thought it was worthy of it.
Okay, well, I'll just repeat, the voluntary housing section is due to get about $1 billion from the state in the Rebuilding Ireland plan. That's quite a lot of state money. I refer to clients, I should have referred to constituents. Apologies to my constituents that I referred to them in that manner. But my point being that there are people out there whose rent has risen by 38% in a period when we're supposed to have rent controls. Now, it may not seem like a whole lot to people who are paying exorbitant rents in the private rental sector, but a rise of €20 a week for somebody who's on an old age pension or a disability allowance, i.e. €1,000 a year, is a hell of a lot to bear. And when I queried and appealed to the housing body to do it more incrementally, to allow for the fact that they've only had a rise of £5 this year, they dismissed it by saying let them go to the relieving officer in the Department of Social Welfare if they have difficulty in meeting their heating bills. This is a flippant, cruel and inconsiderate way for bodies to behave who are receiving the backing of the state. Now, that says to me that there needs to be more constraints, more structures, more rules and regulations put on this area of rental sector who, when we give people homes from the housing list, are in a worse off position going into the voluntary sector than they would be into the local authority. There's a real hole here and it needs to be dealt with.
Minister.
Thank you, Deputy. Well, I really hope they wouldn't be in a worse off position if they're going into a voluntary housing body association than they would be with a local authority, because that's not the intention at all. I mean, there is an obligation, depending on the type of funding that's been received from the housing body, for them to consult with the local authority when it comes to setting rents. There is also, as well as you alluded to, an ability for a tenant of a housing body to apply for a form of rent supplement if they need assistance in doing that. But I think you're absolutely right when you talk about the need for stronger regulation in this area, and that's exactly what we intend to provide when I bring forward the legislation later this year. Thank you.
Deputy Kenny, whose question is grouped with it. Deputy.